Hello, I'm Stuart Brown.
And I'm Mark Ashbridge. We're the directors and co-founders of Pro Edge Rentals. And in this video, we're going to share with you some of the important things that we feel you should be thinking about when choosing a property manager. So the simple question is, how do you choose a property manager?
There are certain key questions that I usually like to ask when I'm actually looking for a property manager. And look, you may be a seasoned investor. You may have several investment properties, so you might understand what questions you need to ask. You might be brand new to the property investment market and you're choosing a property manager for the first time, but still, those same questions can be asked. One of the ones I like, Mark, is just to start off with, is how long have you actually been in the business for?
Yep. Obviously, experience counts for a lot in this industry, and someone who's brand new, 18-year-old, for example, in the corner of the office, may not be the best choice for you. One of the questions I think is very, very important, and certainly one of the ones I look for, first of all, is who is this company? What is this company you're looking at? Is it a traditional real estate agent? So the vast majority of property managers just so happen to be part of a much larger office that typically sell. And in this situation or this scenario, what you'll find is that 90% of the office is focused on selling property and 10% is focused on property management. And you normally find that it's a little desk in the corner of the office manned by an 18, 20, 25-year-old, and the focus of the principal, the directors, the owners, the management, and the vast majority of the staff is dedicated to selling. Now, if that's the case, just think, how well is your property being managed under that scenario? I'm pretty sure the answer is obvious. So one of the things, therefore, that we look for, and we suggest you look for as well, is to find a company whose sole activity is property management and nothing else.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Mark. And I guess, look, if you do one thing, then you generally get pretty good at it, and you do it really well.
Another key question you could ask the company, the property management company you're looking at, is how many properties they manage. Now, obviously, any business, doesn't matter what industry, looks to run efficiently. Okay, so they're looking to maximize revenue, minimize costs. Okay, that's nature of business. But at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice quality of service. Okay, and this quite often gets overlooked, unfortunately. And of course, what happens is if you try to run super lean and you trim staff and other costs to a minimum, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, quite often, quality of service suffers. So when we're talking specifically about property management, one of the metrics or one of the key things you can look at is how many properties does a single property manager manage, or a responsible person manage. Okay, so the more properties that a person is responsible for, then obviously the less time that they can focus on your individual property. So an important question to ask is, how many properties do you manage? Now, not many property managers will tell you this, and we're giving away a bit of a secret here, but when you start getting over 120, 130 properties per individual, it starts getting pretty hard for that property manager to look after that property in a sufficient and good enough manner that they're not starting to miss things. Okay, but quite often you'll find that if they were truthful, a property manager in a lot of companies will be managing upwards of 150 plus. Okay, and they are starting to stretch a little bit. Okay, so you want to understand how many properties they're managing and what systems they've got in place to ensure that they're able to cope with the number of properties that they have under management. Okay, so it's what systems do they use, how do they make sure that rent is followed up, how to ensure that routines are done, How do they ensure that leases that are coming up for expiry are renewed in a sufficient and a timely manner? Various and so on and so on. So it's systems and people and how they cope with the number of properties that they've got under management.
Yeah, and look, it is vitally important, and ask that direct question of your property manager and see what their response is. Now, the number of properties that one property manager can manage can also be, I guess, affected by the quality of those properties. For instance, you might have a lot of older properties which require a lot more maintenance. So obviously your property manager can manage a lot less in number than what they can if perhaps they're all brand new. So that can certainly be taken into account as well. But I usually start, once you get around about that 100 mark, you start looking at, can the property manager obviously do their job efficiently, and as that eases up a little bit more, are they actually struggling or not? So you really have to keep an eye on it. And I think it's one thing that businesses do, I guess, fairly poorly in the industry, in that what they do is they expect too much of their staff members. And of course, as a property manager, they think, oh, look, I'm wonderful, I can manage 200 properties, I can manage 180 properties, or I can manage 150 with ease. And truth be known, they actually can't.
Yeah, they can only manage that number of properties if all they're doing is collecting rent.
Yeah,
okay.
For a very short period of time.
Perfectly honest with you, if you're expected to do everything else that's required and manage your property to the maximum, okay, you simply can't manage that number. Things start getting overlooked, missed, dropped off, and therefore, end result is your property's not being managed to the optimum level.
Yep. Another question that you can ask your property manager is, what is their vacancy rate? So you can generally work out whether they're struggling to rent their properties by their vacancy rate. And naturally, goes without saying, the lower the vacancy rate, the better. Do they count brand new properties in their vacancy rate or not? Or do they only count their existing properties which have previously been let in their vacancy rate? So ask them directly how many properties they have vacant in comparison to how many properties they actually manage. And I reckon that's a really good metric for actually understanding whether your property manager is performing their duties.
Absolutely, because ultimately vacancy rates is the death and the killer of any investment. Correct. Obviously, so you want to find someone who can rent out your property quickly.
You as a seasoned investor or as a new investor generally have an expectation of communication.
Yeah.
But I had a discussion with one of the landlords the other night, and we were having a bit of a general chat about what a quality property manager can do. And something that he said to me, he said, "You've spent a great deal of time with me on the phone." And I think I was on the phone to him for 30 or 40 minutes, and we were chatting about not just his property but about other aspects of the property industry as well. And one of the things that obviously became apparent is property managers get so busy doing a 9-to-5 job, they have very little time to talk to somebody. And a really good indicator as to whether you've got a quality property manager or not is whether they'll actually take the time to talk to you about your needs and spend the time with you to talk to you about your property.
Yeah.
Because if they can't take time to actually do that or schedule time to do that,
yeah.
and I say schedule time to do that,
yeah,
they're not going to be a great property manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So communication is obviously one of those things that we hear about quite often in this industry. And what is communication? There's so many things, and this could almost be a video in itself. But it's not just about returning phone calls. Okay, I mean there's simple things like returning phone calls when that's just obvious. But it's also simple things as well. For example, when you do routine inspections, those inspections are communicated back to you as the owner, with the report, with the photos, with any recommendations. It's about communicating any current or potential issues with the property or the tenants. Okay, keeping you fully in the loop about what's going on. If the property is vacant, what is happening? Okay, if it's on the market, what is happening? Communicating back to you how opens are going, whether we need to tweak the yard, whether we need to tweak the price. Steps basically we need to take in order to try and fill that property. Okay. When not to communicate can be just as important when to communicate. Okay, you may decide and you may appreciate not being bothered by every single thing. For example, we manage quite a number of brand new houses that are still under warranty by the builder. Okay, and often well, not often, but occasionally, when a tenant goes into a brand new house, the dishwasher doesn't work, as an example, okay? It's under warranty. The builder obviously is responsible for replacing that dishwasher. You as the owner don't necessarily need to know and to approve a dishwasher being replaced by the builder because it's under warranty, okay? Going through you and around about just delays the whole process. It can actually frustrate you, and you're sitting there thinking, well, just replace it. A good property manager will use a bit of common sense and sort of just do it because it's under warranty, and perhaps send you a courtesy email just to let you know that there's been a dishwasher fault. We've replaced it under warranty, just to let you know.
Yeah, and that comes down to that building that relationship with the person that's actually going to manage your property. So, as Mark said, some owners don't want that level of communication where they actually feel that they need to make every single decision going forward. So, and that's something that's that's vitally important to understand. It can take a little bit of time.
It's finding out. It's asking the question. What level of involvement do you want? Is one of the first questions we ask. Do you want to be involved in everything? And in which case, obviously, we take steps and make sure that you are. Or do you want to be somewhat isolated and let the property manager look after things up to a certain level? And again, that's what we're here for to do.
One of those key questions, Mark, that every investor should ask their property managers, and that's, do they actually own investment property themselves? Do they even own a property themselves?
Yep, absolutely. So obviously we own investment properties, but as investors we see it from both sides. We see it from obviously the property management side because we own this business, but we also see it from the investor side, and we don't manage our own properties. They're not necessarily where we live, and we engage property managers to manage that property for us. But the good thing about us investing in property as well is that we understand what it's like to be an investor as well, and the level of service that we expect as investors. We naturally return that favour when we put our property manager hat on and we're then talking to you. So we understand both sides of the coin.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess the final thing you should be asking of, and we've deliberately left this last because this is the question that generally gets asked first, and most investors, or a large percentage of investors, think this is the most important question, and we understand why. It's certainly a question you need to ask, and that is obviously, how much do you charge? Okay, naturally it's a question that you want to know. We're going to spend a little bit of time now talking about this and why price on its own is not the most important thing. While it's important, it is not the most important thing, and you should stop thinking about price, but instead start thinking about value. So what are you getting in return for the cost that you're having to pay for that property management service? Is the value greater than the cost to you? And that's the proposition that we're going to talk to you about now.
Absolutely. And as I said, because we talk to hundreds of landlords, all the time, the first question that they generally default to is, well, how much do you charge? And as Mark said, we really understand that question, but it's not necessarily the most important question, and it shouldn't be your most important question or your first question. The reason why most investors ask that, especially new investors, is because they don't know the questions to ask. They don't know to ask about those metrics for service. They don't know to ask about vacancy rates. They don't know to ask how many properties do you manage. So what they do is they make an assumption of service based on price. And I guess we've all been to McDonald's, and you can get two different types of hamburgers at McDonald's. You can buy the cheap one, I guess, which is pre-made,
the dollar special,
and you can have the gourmet burger as well, which you actually pay for. And it's a really good analogy for actual property management services as well, because we can simply collect rent, and we can do that at a reduced price. But is that necessarily actually looking after your investment property? You have to remember the quality of the management will actually affect the value of your investment property going forward, and will actually affect the rate of return. So with a quality investment manager looking after your property, they're going to give you advice about ways that you're going to keep that return up, or perhaps even increase that return. And it can be done a variety of ways. As Mark said, we do regular routine inspections. Feedback to you about those routine inspections, about what may need to be done to the property, will actually maintain the property in the best condition it possibly can. And it might be simple things like, one wall might need to be repainted, or it might need new carpet, the gutters might need to be cleaned out. So simple things like that will actually help your property value going forward from obviously maintenance costs, which is fantastic because it actually helps increase the value of the return on investment.
Absolutely. Concept that I'd like you to consider. If you've got an investment property, let's say it rents out for roughly $500 a week, and you're thinking about, or your number one factor is, okay, well, how much do you charge? And let's say the difference between a good property manager and a less proficient property manager, let's say one charges 8% and one charges 7%, and you naturally think, oh well, you're cheap, I want to go for you because it's it's $3 a week cheaper. However, let's say that the cheap property manager doesn't understand the importance of advertising compared to the one that charges 8%. Now we've got another video on the importance of advertising and how why that can make a massive difference. But if the agency who charges 7%, okay, it's costing you an extra $3 or $4 a week, but if that agency that charges 7% doesn't advertise the property to its maximum benefit, to its maximum potential, it stays vacant for an extra 2 weeks. Okay, compared to what the agency who charges 8%, who doesn't understand the importance of advertising and who can fill it very quickly, there's a difference of 2 weeks. Okay, by going with the 7% agency to save $3 or $4 a week on management fees, you've cost yourself $1,000 in rent, because the 8% agency can advertise your property much better than the 7% agency, and therefore fill it quicker. That's why price is not the most important thing. It's the most important thing is, what service are you going to give me to maximize my return on my investment? Okay, so you've got inputs and you've got outputs. You've got these are the things you're going to do, and these are the results that I expect, and for this is the fee that I'm going to incur. And basically it's a simple equation, and at the end of the end result is, well, what's going to give me the most return? What am I going to be left with? What's the and you want the highest dollar. So it's not necessarily the cheapest input; it's the highest output is what you're looking for. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Mark.
Yeah.
So look, I guess in summary on how to choose a property manager for you, ask the question to start with: are they working for a dedicated property management company? How long have they been in the industry for? What is their vacancy rate? How many properties do they manage? Judge their ability on communication with questions that you might ask about the nature of property. For instance, have they owned property? Have they built property before? And do they really understand what they're actually doing? Make sure that you understand the difference between sales skills and administration skills. And Mark alluded to that in the final topic, obviously, with does your property manager understand that they have to be great salespeople in order to actually attract a tenant and place a tenant for you. If they simply have admin skills only, they may not necessarily be the right choice. But look, we thank you for watching this video on how to choose a property manager, and wish you the best with your investment property.
Thank you.